All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, January 10th, 2020 meeting of the Select Board. We continue to meet virtual in light of COVID-19. It is a whopping 20 degrees out, so please be sure to check on your neighbors because it's gonna get cold. Let's see. Call to order at 7:02. For announcements, meeting of the Berlin Select Board are generally recorded for transmission on both the Berlin Cable Television channel and YouTube. Your voice, image, and/or phone number may be recorded. So first up is the approval of the January 3rd open session meetings. And there's Scott. Scott's back.
Yep.
Can I get a motion on the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right. Started off, Stone Eye.
Hawkins, aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Awesome. All right, Margaret, you are up. We are down to correspondence. Was there any?
We have a few things here. First of all, the Pen Pal program. I don't know if we were going to address this here, but we did get correspondence from Victoria, who is trying to institute a Pen Pal program between seniors and students in our school, elementary school kids. So she is working on this. I know that it has broad support from the Council on Aging, as evidenced in an email from the chair to her. So she is making an effort to do this. If anyone out there watching is interested in participating in this program, please contact Victoria, our Council on Aging and Senior Services Director at coadirector@townofberlin.com.
Yes, and I know that Bob also posted it out on Berlin Neighbors Connect too. So hopefully that will go far and wide.
Okay. The next thing is that we received an email from the Neshoba Valley Regional Dispatch District regarding recognition for one of our own police officers, Carl Corriveau, who was commended or recognized for his compassion and kindness when responding to a medical call on January 5th in Berlin. So I just wanted to make sure that it's out there that Carl is recognized and his compassion and kindness are very much appreciated. Then finally, the Mass Municipal Association is still planning to hold their conference in person this year at the Heinz Convention Center and the Sheraton Hotel in Boston. And I say good luck to them. No, but that's not the correspondence. The correspondence that I have regarding that is the MMA conducts its annual business meeting at the conference. They're going to be doing that on January 22nd. Typically, there is a representative from each of the towns and cities that is a voting delegate for that town. We received correspondence that if a person is not able to attend, and I won't be going, that someone else could be designated to serve as the voting delegate. I don't know if any board member is interested in attending an in-person conference in Boston, but please let me know as soon as possible so we could register you for that. Right around the corner.
I really thought that was a good idea, but I really think we should go together. I won't be going this year.
I wanted to go this year too, but it's not turning out that way.
Right.
Anything else?
Okay, so those are the pieces of correspondence we have for tonight.
All right, thank you so much. Next up is the general public comment. So hello to the 6 attendees in the audience. Nice to kind of see your name. All right, if there's anything that you want to chat about, raise your hand, call on you, and we'll be good to go. All right, 1, 2, 3, gone. Okay, so where are we? At 7:05, look at that, right on time, is our general department updates. The ARPA revenue recovery funds. This is the admin finance team. So our town administrator, accountant, treasurer, collector, and assessing director.
Okay,
So
I don't see.
Audience? No?
Dennis and June are here. I'd like both of them to come up. I don't see Molly here. So we'll go ahead and I've got to go in and get the presentation. Just give me one moment.
I can't tell who is Town of Berlin. It might be Molly.
Yeah, it is me because
Oh, good. Okay, good.
I was just on with my board, so I use your channel and that's how it stays.
Oh, see, I thought that was Mary, the town of Berlin.
Yeah, me too.
Well, as it turns out, I don't have my flash drive with me with the actual
It won't let
PowerPoint.
me promote her on screen with an image, but you have her voice, so.
Okay, good. Mary, would you be able to pull up the PDF of the presentation? Because I did not bring the PowerPoint with me. So if you could bring that up, we can just show the PowerPoint slides. I have a hard copy. And you
Yes,
know
I was
what?
reading it.
We'll kick it in high gear right away. June, Dennis, Molly, please. Thank you, Mary. Please chime in if you have anything to add as we go through. So we've been talking about ARPA for a really long time now. This is the American Rescue Plan Act that was adopted on March 11th, 2021. We're going on a year almost when on the anniversary date of this being adopted. The purpose of ARPA was to provide relief funds to state, local, and tribal governments negatively impacted by COVID. So all in all, $350 billion was voted under a state and local fiscal recovery fund through the act. And there were 4 eligible categories listed under the act. Mary, you can slide it down to the next slide there. And the one that we are going to focus on tonight, without getting too into detail, is the one that we call revenue replacement. Providing this would allow governmental units, towns, our town, to provide revenue losses. Well, it would actually allow us to recoup some of the revenue losses due to COVID for any legitimate governmental purpose. Now, out of the state and local fiscal recovery fund, you can see $8.7 billion was granted to Massachusetts, and out of that 8.7, 3.4 billion went to cities, towns, and functional counties. Worcester County was dissolved years ago with most other Massachusetts counties. So the state and local fiscal recovery fund allowed county reallocations to municipalities whose counties had dissolved years ago. So in the end, Mayor, if you could just scroll down for a tiny bit there for Berlin's allocation. So bottom line is that Berlin's total allocation through the state and local fiscal recovery fund is $968,458. Okay, next slide. That revenue loss we had calculated by an auditor, and through that calculation, we learned that our revenue losses exceeded the allocation we'd received from the state and local fiscal recovery fund. Therefore, we are eligible to use 100% of that allocation, the $968,458, on any lawful governmental purpose. It doesn't have to meet the requirements of those other specific ARPA categories that were listed on the second slide. This is for any lawful governmental purpose, except those purposes, those prohibited uses that you see on this screen. Those monies, the money cannot be spent to pay down debt service. It cannot be spent for tax cuts. It cannot be spent for direct deposits to pension funds, pension contributions. Can't be used for legal settlements, and it cannot be used directly to fund stabilization or to replenish financial reserves. However, we know as a municipality, there are ways that we could dedicate some of this money and in turn, maybe use free cash to fund some stabilization funds. So there are indirect ways to do it. We just cannot do it directly. Okay, next slide. Now, to date, We have already received what they call the tranches. We've received a 50% tranche for our direct municipal allocation, and we've received 50% of the portion for the county reallocation. To date, in total, we've received $484,229. The second half of the allocations from SLFRF are due in early FY23. They'll be coming out sometime this summer, from what we understand, and they're coming directly from the U.S. Treasury. So there is no middle state agency that we're dealing with this time. We are going to be reporting. We're going to have to report directly to the U.S. Treasury, and I have no idea how they've structured their operations to receive reports from every single municipality or county in the United States. So, and the way these funds are accounted for is, June, do you want to do this slide? Do you want to go over this one, or do you want me to?
I'm here for backup.
Okay. Okay, we'll just go through the bulleted items. So the funds that we've received to date have been put into a special revenue fund. It's considered, these monies are considered a grant, spendable only by the select board, or spendable with the approval of the select board. They require no further appropriation. The select board is, like I just said, the select board is the primary authority in towns for distribution of the funds. We have a requirement to fully obligate the funds by December 31st, 2024, and to fully expend them by December 31st, 2026. So this is a multi-year process. So we are going to, we're going to be required to report directly to the U.S. Treasury. And because we are a small non-entitlement community, we are only going to have to do one annual report each year. We're not going to have to do quarterly reports like we've had to do in the past. And our first report is due April of this year. It's supposed to be a simplified report, but I have not reviewed it yet to see what they mean by simplified. And then finally, as far as our funds go, we only have the first half right now, but when we receive the second half, if we by chance have more than $750,000 sitting in that grant fund at one time, we should think twice before expending more than $750,000 on a single project, because then we would be responsible for a United States single audit requirement, which is a great deal of paperwork and time. So we should think carefully before we spend a very large amount of money like that. Okay, and then the next slide. So part of how the funds are to be allocated or have been allocated there are only two allocations we've made from these funds so far. The first is to fund the social services portion of the Council on Aging Director's position for the through the extent of availability of ARPA funds. And then we engaged an independent auditor, not our own auditor, but another independent auditor, to do the revenue replacement calculation and assist us through this. And that total cost was $3,000. That is it. Those are all the projects we have so far. Now, for the select board's consideration, you all have your own ideas and thoughts on how best to spend this money, what to spend it on. Here we've given just a couple of examples of how the money might could be spent. First, we've talked a lot about design engineering to fund infrastructure, pedestrian and traffic infrastructure projects that could potentially qualify us for grant funds later on, and it would position us to do that. We could conduct a true professional municipal facilities assessment to examine condition and use potential and things like that. And to help with our capital planning process. And finally, we've talked a lot about the Highway Barn solar project. That's something else that we could potentially look at, but there are a whole host of things that the community might feel are the highest priority to explore. And finally, the administrative finance team has some recommended best practices. Consider this the kind of the policy guidance for the board in looking at these funds. First of all, because this is an extraordinary one-time funding opportunity to invest in the town's highest priority needs, we recommend that the board seek inputs from other boards, committees, departments, and the community at large to identify the most widely supported one-time project needs that could be funded through this money. We also recommend involving the Capital Planning Committee and Finance Committee and the Administrative Finance team as key stakeholders in the decision-making process, to talk about, the real practical aspects of using almost $1 million of these funds. This funding ends, as you know, and using it to fund recurring operating costs is not advisable, because a structural deficit could result from doing that. I already mentioned avoiding the single audit requirement. And then finally, whenever possible, avoid duplicating funding support to areas or agencies that are already funded through other sources. So if they already have sufficient funding, see if we can manage with that funding before tapping into these funds. So I hope this came as really, really good news for everybody. It's some rare, very good news and something that we should plan to do.
So Margaret, do we have a mechanism? I'm sure that this is going to come up at Coffee Talk next week. Do we have a mechanism for folks in town to email and say, hey, what about? I mean, I've got two that are swirling through my head right now. We had talked about looking into the fixing the sewer at the town hall, so that maybe we could redo the kitchen, which would allow Council on Aging to maybe offer more meals. Or the town hall itself to do things for the town, or maybe even, do we have to worry about the church? Because I'm thinking too, I know we had mentioned that the church was was interested in helping out Victoria with meals, and there's something going on with their kitchen, whatever that is. I don't have details. I don't know. So, are we crossing the lines of separation of church and state, or where it's COVID related, it doesn't matter?
I think that giving money to nonprofits is something that we could potentially be advised against, unless we'd have to look into that. Unless there's a contract involved for those services. However, keep in mind that the board had allocated $3,000 to that community social services line, and I don't know if you'd want to consider using that to help with that particular project. But that's something we could look further into. Typically that wouldn't be much of an option, but we'll look.
It's nice. I mean, you have truly until the 2026. So it's not like, oh my God, we have to spend this money in 6 months. Everybody hurry up.
There's time for a real plan.
Yeah.
So I'm still confused by some of this, in that that $1 million comes from an audit that says that we have lost $1 million worth of revenue due to COVID.
Yep.
And didn't we in fiscal year 22 pass a balanced budget? And so if revenue has disappeared, shouldn't this money go to cover the basic services that we're going to struggle covering without having to dramatically increase taxes?
That's a good question. However, I just want to, there were so many different categories, and not only that, there were, it's a kind of a CPI escalator that the Governmental Finance Officers Association used. They used a 6.1% escalator for the 18 months between baseline year 2019 and 2020. But I do want to note that one of the biggest chunks of our lost revenue just happened to coincide with timing. Where the town lost, where the school district was created, the town lost Chapter 70 money that then went to the school district. That loss in Chapter 70 money reflects as a loss to the town. Even though there's no net loss to the school district, it was recorded as a loss to the town. That alone, Scott, was $615,000. So there were a lot of little chunks, but revenue loss isn't necessarily from taxes alone. It's a combination of things. And that particular item represents the vast majority of it, or a
Mrs.
large portion.
Poland has her hand up.
Well, I just wanted to say that we do have the paperwork, Scott, if you're interested.
Yeah.
But it's
we can
pretty
give you
much a state formula that's based on the formula. It doesn't look at actual details as far as like for us, which is a good thing. We had the auditors come in and check it. Is that we would look at that as an offset type thing and not an actual loss. But because of the way that the formula works, they don't take into consideration like we regionalized. It's just
Right.
dollar for dollar for dollar. And then with the increase, it was all a formula type base. So it
Yeah, we can
wasn't
share those.
actual tax dollars per se,
Right.
but it took all revenues across the board, except for a couple of them. But it even took all special revenues.
Right.
So even state money for grants that we were receiving that we didn't get, that was counted as part of the revenue loss. So
Mhm.
Well,
There
and
are-
we have some problems out there. I mean, that Sears has closed.
Yep.
Sears really in art
Yep.
has closed, and so that is like that's a chunk of revenue that's not coming back. And we've had some other businesses struggle and might not. And I have some worries that we're going to spend a bunch of time on one-time stuff, and we have a structural deficit problem that we could use this money to spend over a couple of years to figure out a way to sort of right size either staffing or other areas of town so that we don't have to raise taxes pretty substantially to cover in the long run for the losses of some of that commercial revenue.
I guess if we could come up with a plan, the idea of structural deficits is scary. I don't want anybody to be scared. But
Right.
if we were to do something like that, where we're going to be putting some of this money into recurring expenses, we really need to have a separate plan to address the structural deficit that will be created from that over the course of a few years.
remember,
I
we
mean, I-
can't use it directly though to cut taxes. That's one of the major
Yeah,
Right.
things.
we can't do that specifically, right?
I don't think it's as much to cut taxes as much as we don't have this revenue coming in anymore, and we don't want to cut services dramatically fast. We might cut them slowly over time, but that because this revenue has gone away, that we want to make sure that we have some planful time to shrink the town of Berlin's government. Because I mean, this money is that
To
according to
shrink
this
Berlin's
report, we have
government?
lost. We according to this report, we have lost $1 million worth of revenue
Yeah.
from a balanced budget, which means we have a
No,
deficit.
no.
And how are we going to address that deficit over the next couple of years?
Okay, June, I think, you know what, I think what we should do is provide the calculation sheet so you can see what they're classifying as revenue. The definition of general revenue they're using is based on the US Census's definition of general revenue. It's not necessarily what we've really lost.
So-
For example, like I said, we used to get the Chapter 70 money, now the school does. We
Right.
lost it.
So
they got it.
we as a town have not lost any revenue from COVID. COVID has not caused any decrease in revenue in this town.
No, there are items that it has affected, yes.
Mhm.
Right. And so we probably should use some of this money to cover some of the short-term loss of revenue that we've had because of COVID.
But
But we-
keep in mind that what we're getting the money from is over the past 2 years. So when we drastically cut and reduced budgets, level funded, they took into account that if we had the normal growth, they were taking that into consideration. So even though we cut budgets, they were saying, well, if we receive the full potential,
Yeah.
this was also part of that offset. So it's not, you'd have to look at the formula, but there are sections in it that are for like things like the hotel tax. That would have been a larger portion of it. But it's not completely direct because of the way they calculated it. It's not actual direct losses or deficits. It's
That's
just
right.
Margaret was really good at cutting and making sure we were in a real balanced budget based on extremely
We did.
low estimates, where
Yeah,
they
our-
looked at it as it should have been a higher estimate.
Yeah, we cut our budgets in order to create the balanced budget over the past 2 years. As far as replenishing some of those budgets and build them back up, that's something that I think we're going to be able to do within our available recurring revenues. So I don't know that it would be advisable to use one-time revenues to restore some of the budget cuts that we've made.
Right, and we did
Nope.
just get an admin report that talked about a variety of administrative simplification and efficiency projects that were going to be both time and costly. And it could be that we try to undertake a bunch of those with this money so that at the end of this, we have a more efficient town government.
That's a good point. To the extent that any of them are projects that require one-time funding to implement, there's no reason we couldn't look at that. Yep.
Well, the one-time
want to,
funding could be because those projects are going to hit heavily on the treasurer's and accountant's office. And it could be that for 2 years, we give extra staffing to those departments for these projects to happen.
Or the training.
And the training, because those departments are heavily taxed now, and even if their processes are a little inefficient, those inefficient processes have to continue while we're in the process of transitioning to something potentially better.
I don't want to stop discussion. It's really
Right,
good.
but I know we have guests waiting. Yep.
Yes, we have guests
We
waiting.
tried to wrap it up in as short a time as possible.
Which is fine. You know what? So we'll schedule another meeting, probably after coffee talk, because I'm sure that there'll be a boatload of questions from there too. So we'll definitely invite Molly, Dennis, and June to come on back and we can kind of hash this out. But I would like to, so thank you. Appreciate all the work that you are doing for this and will do for this. It'll be a boatload of work. So thank you for stepping up and taking care of it. But I would like to bring to the front the Honorable Senator John Cronin and the Honorable Meg Kilcoyne, our state rep.
Oh, good.
Oh, there's Meg. Hey, Meg, how are you?
Hey, Peg, can you hear me?
Absolutely. Oh, and here
Awesome.
comes Senator Cronin. Thank you both for joining us tonight. It is lovely to see both of you at the same time. So we wanted to
Hi, great to be here.
It is. It's wonderful to have you. Give you guys some time to talk about what's going on in the legislature and impacting the state, impacting the town. I'm sure you're involved with COVID, probably up to here and everything. So I will open the floor to the both of you.
And I will defer to Representative Kilcoyne first.
Meg, since
Thank
you're
you
most
so
on the
much,
totem pole
Peg,
here, it's
and-
you.
Thank you to my esteemed senator. I think though, obviously it's hard to sum up this year, right? It's been quite a journey. I think, as you know, you guys have been on the front lines on the local level. And I know, we've had to work together to try to figure out some of these things. I mean, it's crazy to think when the senator and myself were sworn in, we were dealing in a time where vaccine supply was in high demand and short supply. And we're fortunately at a position now where we're looking to get boosted, where, we're trying to encourage as many people to get vaccinated as possible. So those listening out there, if you haven't gotten boosted or vaccinated, highly encourage you to do so. And please reach out to either of our offices if you're having trouble accessing them. There are some resources that we can be helpful with. I think though, the biggest thing that I think is significant though, is the fact that, and I know that you guys are dealing with budgetary issues, but we are very, I think, fortunate to be in the position that we are in, given the state side of things. I know when, back in 2020, we were looking at serious shortfalls, and I'm excited or grateful to be in a position where we didn't see significant revenue cuts at our state budget. And we just finished in December, finalizing funding for ARPA. So, and while, the town of Berlin, I don't believe we're going to see any direct earmarks. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for the town to apply for some of these funding opportunities that are there. and Margaret has been an incredible resource. I know throughout this year, we've been in a lot of contact on various issues, and we stand ready to help with anything moving forward. And in terms of earmark, you know, we're about to start the state budget process once again. And I know that I've had some conversations with you, and I would encourage you to continue those conversations and let us know where there's certain areas that we can be helpful with and trying to provide just a little bit of additional help there. So we're excited to start that process, that budget process. We're very fortunate to kind of be back on the schedule. I know that it's been a tough couple of years for towns to figure out what the state is doing with the COVID delays, especially in 2020. So we don't anticipate any more delays despite the recent surge happening, but we'll continue to keep you guys updated as that goes forward. And I think, you know, covered a lot of budgetary issues, but those are sort of the things that we know are coming. As we go into the next few months, though, we will be winding down the legislative session itself. The last full formal should, assuming that it happens as it did prior to COVID, will end on July 31st. I'm really happy to say, though, and I share this victory with Senator Cronin, both of our offices worked hard in making sure that we did actually get a bill passed in May of 2021 that would extend the retirement years for, I believe, the fire chief. And I think that one thing that is significant is that was actually one of the first bills signed into law of this session. So that was, I think that might have actually been the first one, because I saw some rumblings on it when it first was done. But I give so much credit to Margaret for being so on top of things and keeping us updated. I give credit to all of the select board and making sure that, you know, we were ready to go from day one. And I was very grateful for the partnership for Senator Cronin to get that over the finish line. Technically, it wasn't our names were on it, the governors were, but it was our job to get it signed into law from the legislature. So I was very happy that you know, it's one of those smaller local issues, but I know how important it is to make sure that we do our job up at the Beacon Hill and get those, you know, housekeeping legislative local issues done. So I was really, I think, you know, as a first-time legislator, I will always have a fond memory of that being the very first bill I saw signed into law for the town of Berlin. So, you know, that was, I think, a great thing to happen this session. And I think we're going to see a lot more good things for the next 6 months. But I've been talking too much already. So I will kick it over to my colleague in the Senate, Senator Cronin, and then, of course, happy to answer any questions after the senator speaks as well.
Thank you, Representative. And I just want to start by echoing what Rep. Kilcoyne said. I've been at this almost as long as Meg, but not all town administrators are created equal. And it's been a pleasure and a privilege to work with Margaret. And I think she's been a steady and excellent hand for the town. So I just want to express my thanks and gratefulness to her for her work. Looking toward the fiscal year 23 outlook, good news from the state level is that revenue continues to exceed projections. And so I think what that means for the town is to expect stability for Chapter 70 funding and Chapter 90 funding. And, you know, as the representative mentioned, in December, we were able to get passed and signed into law the first tranche of the state ARPA money, which was $2.6 billion. We are kind of on the same timetable that you were briefed on the previous slide in terms of allocating the rest of that money by 2024. One other thing that we worked on with Representative Kilcoyne and my office was to secure an earmark in the FY22 budget for 19 Carter, which was a important support for really the great community center that you have there. And I believe that's going to be used for a handicap accessible entrance, but so look forward to a ribbon cutting in the future on that one. The only thing I'd like to raise to the board tonight is really to make sure that you have an eye toward the rest of the federal funds that we know are coming. As you know, the transportation or the infrastructure package was signed by Congress in the past few months. That's going to be $5.3 billion in money for infrastructure to Massachusetts alone. 4.2 for roads and highways, 1.1 billion for bridges. And so I think what's really critical is to make sure that the infrastructure programs that are important to the town of Berlin get on the tip, and the transportation improvement program, so they can get on the STIP and they can get funded when the state receives and looks to spend these infrastructure dollars. So I think those are really important. And again, with the free cash and the other ARPA funds that you're receiving, to maybe hold off making decisions for infrastructure projects until we know with certainty what can and can't be funded by the state, just to provide you the most flexibility as possible at the local level. And with that, it's been a privilege to serve in the state Senate and represent the town for the past 12 months. Sadly, I have been redistricted out of representing Berlin in the future. So Berlin will be in Senator Harriet Chandler's district starting next year, which is sad and frankly disappointing for me. But you're going to be in outstanding hands, and more importantly, you're going to still be represented by Representative Kilcoyne, who is a leader and doing really a remarkable job as a freshman in the House of Representatives. So with that, I spoke too long, and I know myself and the representative are both happy to answer any questions.
Well,
And
Senator Cronin,
Representative Kilcoyne will be happy to take all the hard ones. Thank you.
I was going to say, Senator Cronin, we certainly have a bridge. It sounds like the beginning of a joke. So there's a bridge in Berlin. But we'll definitely keep that in mind for the infrastructure. So Chris, Scott, Margaret, I'll open it to you if there's any folks in the audience that want to ask our esteemed colleagues anything. Put your hand up and away we'll go. All right, Chris, you're first up.
So you were talking about the legislation that you got passed for us last year. I was wondering whether you might have any kind of update on the liquor license request that we had put in, I think after our November 8th special town meeting. We requested 2 additional liquor licenses for the town. And we already have several people who are very interested in applying for them.
So those 2 are still pending. The good news about liquor licenses and local approval is that they're not under the same type of deadline that other general legislation would be. So we aren't going to be under that July 31st deadline that I mentioned earlier. You know, we identify that those are local matters that can typically be done till the year end. So that will still go through the legislative process. It is a little later in the session, so we're not quite as far as we are on other pieces, but that's nothing to be alarmed about. And that those typically follow a slightly different timeline than you would see general legislation followed. We will certainly keep the board, usually via Margaret, updated on any progress those makes. I don't have any significant updates for you now. I think just given the time frame, we're not, you know, we still have to kind of make sure it gets cleared through the clerk's office. But we certainly will keep you updated as of any events as soon as we have them. And one thing I would say too is that we're not quite there yet, but one thing that's always helpful if you want to supply a letter from the board in support of the bill, and we can help you when that timing is appropriate. It just kind of helps make sure that the committee knows that we're not just filing this, or it has the support of the town and of yourselves. But we will obviously look, with any of our local pieces, those are the special, whether or not you're freshmen or been in the legislature for 30 years, those are the biggest priorities, right? Like those are the ones that impact our communities directly. So we will be sure to do everything we can to get those over the finish line before 2022. And we still have a fair amount of time left in the legislative cycle. And like I said, we have a little more time than the July 31st deadline, which is always hopeful. But keep us posted. Like if you are getting people that are asking about it, always feel free to either contact us directly, or if they want to ask us questions, our offices are always open. So just keep the communication up and we'll do the same.
So does that mean that it could possibly be sometime before fiscal year FY24?
I don't like to give timelines because
Okay.
people tend to
No.
glom onto them. Like we all we can promise is we'll do everything we can to get it done
Oh, I
as
know.
soon as possible.
I know you will.
You know, so it's just I've seen that happen before where we're like, yeah, we'll get it done by then, and then something happens or it gets delayed or even just bottlenecked with other legislation. So I don't want to give any specific timeline other than we know the ultimate deadline we're working under. We're going to do everything we can to get it done as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I've had, well, we've all had several people who have been asking about them, and I don't quite know what to tell them. So I'll just tell them that.
And we'll, yeah, and
hopefully-
we can certainly provide, you know, I don't have the legislation in front of me right this moment, but we can provide Margaret an update just so the next meeting that
Okay.
comes up, or maybe it's coffee talk, like we can give a further update on where those stand.
Right. Okay.
Go ahead, Scott.
Right. So I just want to continue to encourage that, you know, every time that you look at sort of local issue bills, whether it be from Berlin or other towns, is, you know, why is there state rules that say this has to go to the state legislature and not something the towns can control themselves? Because those hundreds of those local bills, really, I'm sure you don't care whether or not the police chief in Pittsfield is staying past the age of 65, or whether or not Holyoke wants another liquor license,
Yeah.
or whether or not, you know, Barnstable, you know, words their special legislation somewhere, and that those bills both delay our ability in town to get things done in a timely manner and take up your time. Because if you're going to the governor to say, gosh, where is this bill for the fire chief to stay on past 65, and you're pulling in favors for the legislators to get hearings on it, that's work you're not putting towards making the state run better and other sort of larger issues for both the town and the state.
Yeah, and Scott, I take your point, but I think I would say, you know, these laws have been in place for quite some time. And I think when you're talking about some of these local pieces, you're dealing with different areas, like, you know, the retirement age, that's all linked into the pension system and all of that goes with that. The liquor licenses, you know, those have been in place for such a long time in terms of the limits on certain municipalities. And that's not to say that there's not areas for reform. And I know those conversations are ongoing. I think though, for the purposes of the senator and myself, you know, we always will prioritize getting what we need to do for our community as we to get that short-term goal accomplished, right? Because what you're talking about is, I think, much wider reform, and I'd be happy to do a little more research and provide you with information on what bills are out there to maybe tackle some of those statewide issues, and we can definitely have a longer conversation about that. But I think, to your point, our focus is always going to be getting those local bills done rather than trying to put our energy in trying to fight, you know, trying to deal with these issues that are much broader than this particular these particular things itself. Because frankly, when you're talking about a statewide policy, those can take years, sometimes decades to get accomplished. And so we don't want to take, you know, we always should have conversations of what we can do better, of how we can streamline certain things, but that's not going to detract from our focus on getting what your individual needs are with the current system that is in place right now.
Just the journey of 1,000 miles starts with those first steps. And yes, it's going to take a decade to fix some of these really messy ones. But, you know, it's going to take a decade if we start 10 years from now than even if we start 2 years from now.
Absolutely. And full disclosure, you know, I don't know every bill that, you know, there's thousands of bills filed. So
Right.
I'd be happy to, you know, do a little research and we can have a longer conversation about, you know, what's out there to make it easier for municipalities.
Maybe it's time for the next municipal modernization round.
Yes. Because if you start one now, it's 10 years from now before it gets through. The infrastructure bills, that could help bridges that aren't necessarily on federal or state roads, correct? That could do bridges that are on side roads as well. And so if we're looking at potentially, maybe a bridge that might be wearing away and be too narrow somewhere around, the River Bridge development, this might be a way to get that done in a
I would say we
bigger
haven't kind of received those left and right limits to how this funding is going to flow from the feds to the state to municipalities yet. So I don't want to get I don't want to stake out a claim that's further than frankly any information we have right now.
Do you have a sense of about when some of those outer posts are going to be set?
Quickly, yeah. I think in the next few months here. You know, the bill has been signed by the president, and those funds are going to flow. And I think, you know, frankly, there's a need for infrastructure funding right now that we're going to be in a hurry to get out to cities and towns. One other thing quickly that I was remiss to forget to mention during kind of my introduction, but Assabet Valley Vocational High School has reformed its admission standards in a way that is going to have a serious effect on Berlin. And I believe it just are any of you aware now on the proposed impact to the town?
I was reading an article that Shrewsbury is trying to look to join Assabet, but that would mean something needs to go out to all the towns that are currently at Assabet to see if they'll let Shrewsbury join.
So I believe Berlin is going to be in a similar position because Berlin currently is a non-member sending community. That's not a part of the Assabet Regional District, and Assabet has reformed its admission standards for the first time.
We are a member.
You are a member?
I thought we were a
Senator,
member, yeah.
Berlin is a member. Berlin is a
Okay,
member.
I'm
Yeah.
completely. All right.
I know, you just said
And then
panic
I
through the
just
whole
wanna-
through.
I want to add in the
Good
senator's
news.
defense.
There is good
We
news.
share
More
many towns
kids
that are
from
not.
Berlin are going to be admitted to
Well,
Assabet.
I'm not sure if
So
that
it
was
does
my
impact the town.
understanding, though. I thought my understanding was that it might possibly be that less kids may
Right.
be able to go. So
The change to the standard is the school is moving to a blind lottery, and it's going to use an average of the past 3 years, I believe, of students from Berlin to allot seats. And non-member communities are only going to be access seats if there are no member community students trying to get in, if that makes sense.
yeah, as long as the member communities come first, that would be helpful.
Yeah, and our understanding, based on the briefings we've gotten from Assabet, is that they will be prioritized. So our understanding, and I will say too, we have a few communities that are actually going to be in a situation where they may not have access. But we've been very clear that we want to make sure that member communities such as Berlin and Northborough, which is another town I have that is a member community, is, you know, we understand that the desire for the policy and why it needs to happen, and we certainly don't want to detract anything from member community towns and the students that they'll send. So, you know, both, I'd like the senator said, it's our understanding that with the policy they have now, it should not have a negative impact on the admission rate for Berlin students.
Well, I hope not.
But we'll continue to keep, I mean, we're having conversations with Assabet going forward, and that this is a very new policy. So if we do get any information or updates, we certainly will keep the town informed of what we're hearing on our end as well, or if there's any changes that come down from DESE.
Okay, because there are a lot of people in Berlin who really do appreciate Assabet. They have gone to Assabet. Their children, they want them to go to Assabet. So yes, if there's anything detrimental, please let us know.
We will, and again, we want to assure you that the new changes will not have a negative impact on Berlin. So we don't anticipate any significant decreases in the admissions rate for Berlin students. The issue is frankly the fact, I mean, Assabet we know is a fantastic school and facility, and the issue isn't really affecting Berlin, but some other towns unfortunately have been impacted. But we are cognizant of the fact of Berlin's status as a member community, and we certainly don't want to detract from that in any way.
Thank you.
Scott, Chris, Margaret, anything else? Last call, folks in the audience, our distinguished
The only-
guests, any questions?
I only have two points. First of all, in the infrastructure funding, thank you very much, Senator Cronin, for going over that. We actually do have a bridge right now on South Street that's going to be undergoing reconstruction, hopefully using the small bridge program. through the state. So that might not be funding that's becoming available. It might be funding that's already available. So we're going to be doing that, and we will look at other infrastructure project funding. But it's important to note that we need to prepare. We need to have our design engineering done in order to be able to qualify for this funding on time. So it's just something to think about. And the last, I only have one question. Senator Cronin, you mentioned state budget projections, or the state revenues exceeding the budget projections. How is unrestricted general government aid looking? Do you expect that that will also remain stable, or maybe a slight increase in that in the coming year?
I would say I'm cautiously optimistic. While revenues right now are exceeding projections, we're also projecting revenues to slow down. So I would say in terms of those funds, I'm cautiously optimistic.
Okay, thank you. All I have.
Thank you. Well, as Meg said, we are going to have coffee talk next week. So it's an opportunity for the folks in town to come to us. We don't deliberate, we don't discuss, we don't vote. It's, hey, what's on your mind and what keeps you up at night? So we do have a list of items that we'll be presenting to the town. So I'm sure when Margaret and the finance folks start to talk about funding, there'll be tons of questions back. Meg will reach out. John, when did you say that we were switching over to Senator Chandler?
When?
Correct.
When?
Next state election, after the next state election.
Oh, okay. All right, so we still have to, so you're not going away from us. We still got you.
Oh, November.
All
On the
right,
clock. Yeah.
you can, John, you can run, but you can't hide from us. We're good at
That sounds good. I'm not running or hiding.
So no, we'll definitely be in touch. Meg, let us know when we might need to send that letter about the liquor licenses, and we can get it crafted, and the three of us can get down there and sign it and then get it out to you to try and help scoot it along. So you let us know when the timing would work for you.
Yeah, and I'll touch base with Margaret tomorrow. I mean, I would say just for your purposes, if you even wanted to start drafting it like now,
Just don't date it. Just don't date it.
Yeah, just don't date it. You
Okay.
guys can sign it. It's more for the committee, and it's not like they're gonna, it's more if you have that, even if it's like backdated, this week,
Okay.
it's not going to detract from their purposes. It's more just to have on record, this is important to the town, and it's always helpful. And we'll make sure that we can even help make sure that we flag it for the committee too. But if you guys want to organize and just make sure, because I know it's Berlin is not huge, but it's not easy always getting everybody down to town hall, especially with COVID, to sign these things. So if it's easier for you guys to start sooner rather than later, that's not going to cause a problem on our end.
All right, I'm happy to do
Okay.
that. All right, any last call for questions? All right,
Oh,
Meg, it
thank
was
you.
lovely to see you at the pinning. It was funny, I leaned
Yes.
over to Margaret and went, why didn't we invite Senator Cronin and Meg? And then when I leaned back up, I looked out and went, well, she's here. So-
After we figured out who was behind the mask.
I
Yeah,
know.
pretty-
No, it's really nice to see, a ceremony like that and meet the chief and both. I know, Senator Cronin and myself look forward to working with him and the department and doing what we can to help support their mission as well. So it was really glad I could be able to make that. And, anytime that there's events like that, let both of our offices know. We always like to attend those when we can.
Cool.
Great.
All right. Well, we thank you. We appreciate you. Keep plugging away for Berlin for us, and we will definitely be in touch.
Great.
Thank
you.
Good night, everybody.
Meg.
Thank
Talk
you,
to you
Senator
soon.
Cronin. Thank you, Meg.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. All right. So agenda, where'd you go? All right. So Margaret, you're up. Town Administrator report.
Okay, just a few things. Leading off with COVID tonight. So I reported new COVID cases last week, 73.
In Berlin.
Those are the
Wow.
reported cases. Those are the reported cases, yeah. The DESE in Boston, Division of Elementary and Secondary Education, has issued a mask requirement for all schools through February 28th. That just came out today from DPH. CDC, as you have probably heard, has issued new isolation and quarantine guidelines. I will be sending those out. However, I was on a call last week with DPH, and CDC's revised guidelines are highly controversial. So we are going to be following our DPH guidelines to the greatest extent possible. We do have the COVID-19 temporary emergency paid sick leave was implemented by the Commonwealth back in, I can't even remember. I think it was back in April and then extended, or maybe it was extended in April, and it's ongoing. And we do have a number of personnel who are qualifying for the temporary emergency paid sick leave. These are through reimbursements. So we have to submit reimbursement requests to the state for a maximum of $850 per employee, or up to 40 hours for each employee. No payments would be made from emergency paid sick leave beyond those thresholds. But this is more reporting we're going to have to be getting going on because there appears to be a number of them. And this emergency paid sick leave can be taken advantage of by employees who are going for their boosters for vaccines, taking a family member for a booster, someone who's been exposed or who has COVID. So the reasons this could be taken are very broad. The Community Preservation Committee met last week, and they are going to be presenting their recommended FY23 capital budget to the board on January 31st. February 1st is the deadline for CPC under the bylaw to present the recommended capital budget. The Finance Committee met last week. They also unanimously approved the contingency line item expenditure for COVID at-home antigen tests for distribution to Berlin residents. And as of today, the chair of the Board of Health, Fire and EMS Chief, and COA and Social Services Director have set up a meeting for Wednesday to establish that distribution plan that the Board and Finance Committee have cited as a condition for approval of the funds. The Finance Committee's budget meeting schedule is out. I think that I copied the board on that. So if you're interested in attending any of those virtual meetings, you're welcome to attend. And then finally, the Housing Choice Grant that funded our municipal parking lot paving project, in part, is we're going to be receiving a $75,000 reimbursement from the state. We already have $25,000 of that in hand, and all of these funds are going to be reverting to next year's certified free cash. Project's done, and we're going to be getting our reimbursement now.
Nice. Okay. All right. Thank you, Miss Margaret. Any questions, Scott or Chris?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay. All right. So next up under old business is the Mabel Felton Marble Scholarship Award for one of the recipients for it last year. And if I read the email correctly, we are good to go to have it swap out to the other. Okay. All right, good. So that really wasn't a complete sentence for those in the audience who are wondering, about Peg's hieroglyphic speech. So we, so we had the sad, the sad part is that you three know exactly what I'm talking about. So
I did, and I was torn because it wasn't a complete sentence, but it also protected the privacy of the person who
correct. That is correct.
impacted.
So I will just leave it to say is that there was a award winner that needed to change schools. And so we needed to reach out to the generosity of the people providing this funding to see if we could move it from school A to school B. And we received their permission. So we thank you. It's very kind and generous of those who give us the funds for that. So thank you for that. So Mary, will you be reaching out, sending some formal letter to the family?
Yes.
Maybe? Cool. All right.
Mary, are you still, excuse me, are you still looking for the timeline that you want the board to extend this for, 6 months or 12 months?
It's their call.
Yes.
Right.
So my recommendation is to extend it for the 12 months allowed by the benefactors.
Okay.
I would make such a motion.
Yep.
Second,
All righty. Well, there's really not a lot of discussion needed. Stone eye.
Hawkins,
Keefe, aye.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. And again, thank you to the family that allowed the opportunity for us to do that. All right. Next up on the agenda, this is an easy peasy one. So Kyle Tucker was formally approved by Concom last Wednesday to become a conservation member. And we had approved it a few meetings ago based on the contingency that conservation also get to it. So now that we are good, has a letter gone out or is one going out to Kyle?
The letter will go out after tonight's select board meeting with this notice from the Conservation Commission.
Does it need a signature? Scott? No. Chris?
I
No.
don't-
Nobody? Okay.
No.
All right. If it needs one, just holler. I will skip down the whole mile down to the town offices to get it done. I won't literally skip because I wouldn't make it out the driveway, but I will gladly drive down. Yes. Yeah. No, Chris, it's more like this for me to skip down there. All right. Next up on the agenda is the letter for the conservation land grant application. We spoke with conservation. I was on the meeting with them last week, and kind of they now understood why. We sent them a letter, and Maddie, I think it was Maddie, was kind enough to send like the 2 information back. So Mary, if you can let me know when that letter is ready to go, I will drive down to the town offices and sign it and get that going.
It's in the folder, right?
Oh, I think so.
I mean, to the degree that I can draft a letter for the Conservation Commission.
Yeah, you know what? They really didn't know either. And it was funny. Carolyn's looking at it. She's like, what is this? So I had to remind them what it was for. But if Maddie didn't have any verbiage changes, I think it's just pretty much to say, yes, we, the board, approve of Maddie.
I wrote that in a draft, so I'll just lay it on the table for you to sign, Peg.
Okay.
We have a meeting
right.
tomorrow, I believe. We have a meeting this week sometime regarding that application. So
Thursday.
Thursday, okay. yeah.
Thursday for something. Okay. Margaret, do you want me to wait to sign it until then? So if there's any
Yeah.
last minute changes needed?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Next up on the agenda is so Scott, I'm going to turn this over to you. This is for the RFQ issues with the $100,000 for the Bullet House. You're on.
so the Historic Commission decided that it's really to try to apply for round 28. There's just not enough time. We could have used the money that was passed at the last special town meeting as the match, but it really requires some architectural plans. As an architectural and retainer, we don't have who has enough time and energy to actually write the proposal between now and the early part of March. And with, none of us know with COVID what our lives are going to look like from day to day, sort of anyway. So they decided to basically postpone until round 29, which, although that potentially gets us another year, we don't want to be sitting here, in January of 2023 going, oh my goodness, we only have 3 months to write it. But it's also because the grant requires matching funds. That also means that for May town meeting, we should have a warrant article for $100,000 for Bullard House renovation. So that could be the matching side of the 100,000 from the state. And so I think they're reaching out to the CPA committee to make sure that they have request. They'll need some time to put the formal wording of the proposal together. But that we know that we have a structural survey that had about $300,000 worth of work to do. We've done a chunk of it, but there's still more than 200,000 left to do on it. And so I think what they're planning on is that their warrant will look like, to do up $100,000 so that so to be used as the seed money for a matching state grant to continue to do things that are a part of the structural surveys for the Bullard House. And so that's where they're going at that. There were just questions. The application is like 62 pages long. The round 29 is going to be about the same. And a lot of it in it had, the town shall have purchasing policies in place and other things like that. I believe we have in place, but it'll be nice just to be able to double check that. And some of that's going to fall to you, Margaret. And again, the other reason to wait is that your time and energy between now and March 1st is limited. And so we didn't want to put in a crappy application that was rushed. I mean, we being the Historic Commission, sorry, I'm not a member, I'm just a liaison, but I think they came to some good conclusions on it. They're going to be looking potentially between now and probably the fall to try to find some money to bring a historic architect on board to make things work a little bit better. As you were doing ARPA funding, that sounds like a decent use of ARPA funding. It's one time. It puts the town in a better position to get federal and state grants. To me, that's that type of characteristic, using one-time money to make the town more eligible for other money, sounds like a good use generically. Doesn't mean that everything like that works, but just like the Route 62 study makes us more eligible for stuff, I think that works. And so I'm believing we'll hear a little bit more of historical to just start making sure the pieces can come together so that we feel like we have a good application for round 29 and are more likely to succeed. They also believe that showing that the town has invested $100,000, we've stabilized the sales, we've stabilized the foundation, the type of stuff that's going to be done by the time we do the application will show some serious investment to the town and dedication to the building, which will also make it a better application at that time as well. And so I think they, despite it was a much longer meeting than I think any of us would have liked it to be, I think where they ended up was fairly. I think their last couple of votes were even unanimous. So I felt good about where they went.
I'm sure that I know one question that comes to my mind is, how much have we already spent on the Bullard House and match it up against the work that was done? And I know that they have a plan for, what's going to happen. That might be something, Scott, to put in their ear as well, if they are going to come to town meeting and ask for money to have all that laid out.
I mean, some of it was that some of their own internal disagreements were about, that the town has owned this for 25 plus years and it's still not available open to the public. And it is, and I still think that if you think about the last town meeting where there were people who legitimately wanted us to try things more in a volunteer and cheaper and local effort, that's really what they've been trying. They've been trying that, and I think it is good that they tried that first. I don't think that it's a failure that it's taken 20 plus years to get to where they're at as much as it was. They've tried to do it with volunteers. They've tried to do it without a town administrator. They've tried to do it when the town has not had the staffing it has now. And we're now to the point where we've realized that's not working the way that I think even the proponents of that approach wanted to work. And they've done some pretty incredible stuff with that. There's a decent roof on it. Some parts of the inside are in fairly decent shape. Weatherization. And so I think it is from 2016 going forward, they've tried a slightly different and more aggressive approach, a more sort of, I'm trying not to put value words, but an approach that is more tried in other larger institutions where there is there are federal standards of what a restoration of historic structures look like, and following some of those. Because when you follow those, then you really do start excluding the ability to do things with volunteers, because you have a lot of legal standards to try to reach. And so I think that's been the reluctance of the Historic Society up to now, or Historic Commission, sorry, up to now to adopt those standards, is that when you do that, your ability to grab a handful of people and work on a project randomly it becomes more limited. And I'm hoping when Historic Society, conservation people see this, hopefully they all believe that I have appropriately characterized their several hour-long meeting.
I'm sure that there will definitely be more to come. So Thank you for, bringing it up.
Yep. And I think they're right. I think they have a handle on it at this point. I don't think there's an action for us to take at the moment, except to be aware that they are planning on recommending to go in ground 29. That will require us to approve that. It is a select board, because the select board has to be the requesting body. And so at some point it's going to be our names on the application.
Okay. All right. So Margaret, I'm going to throw it back to you to talk about select board liaisons to the school committee. This was
Yeah.
something that Susan brought up, Susan Henry brought up, whenever she was here.
Yeah, Susan brought it up and then followed up with a few emails back to me. And Susan might be here under the alias Bob Blair.
Really? Is it Susan who's really Bob?
She might be in the audience. But yeah, she asked that if the select board would consider designating a liaison to the school committee. School committee would do likewise, in order to keep the channels of communication open from the policy bodies. So Susan, are you here?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Hi, Susan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to add too that I had a very nice conversation with Susan today. And go ahead, Susan, I'll let you speak.
Well, my interest is just in opening up some communication flow between the town and the school committee. The school committee and the district schools are sitting out on a limb now that we're regionalized. We don't have to report to you guys, or you don't have to attend our meetings, and we can operate as separate arms, and I don't think that's particularly good for anybody. So I'd really like, we have liaisons as well as you do, and so Chris and I were just talking about having a more casual arrangement where I come to your meetings quarterly or so and bring information to and from your meetings, and Chris attends or listens in on our meetings occasionally as well, and we just feel like we've got a good, healthy relationship where we could pick up the phone and ask questions or chase down some information as needed. So it's really all in the interest of getting a good, comfortable flow going.
And I agree. And unless Peg or Scott have any kind of objection, I would volunteer to be the liaison. I think we can work it out so that it's not as time consuming for either one of us as it might seem.
Right. It's a little looser than your normal liaison activity.
I'm good. I mean, Chris, if you have the time and it sounds like you and Susan are already starting to work together. Not it. So, so yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, congratulations.
I also think that when we do our departmental updates, the rotation affords sort of a blank in the schedule every now and then. And I'm wondering if that blank is about quarterly, where that makes a good way to squeeze in the schools into the schedule.
Yeah. I mean, I think that in terms of just the kinds of work that we get done and on that schedule, I was thinking quarterly also, that seems about the right timing.
Perfect. Well, Chris, thank you. And Susan, welcome aboard. So,
I'm not joining the select board. Don't rope me in.
Okay. Welcome aboard quarterly to our meetings there. How's that? Is that a better qualifier?
I look forward to that, and I appreciate Chris the call today, and I'm happy to get this underway.
And we appreciate everything you're doing too, Susan.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Susan.
While Susan is here, Susan, would you be available for the board's coffee talk on next Thursday at about 7 o'clock to brief the community on the 2022 regional school committee election?
Yes, it is on my calendar, and I'm waiting to hear whether another member of the school committee might be joining me or not.
Great, thank you.
That's great.
Terrific. Thank you for the invitation. That's a great opportunity for us to get the word out a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Susan. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
And Margaret, nice segue, by the way, hats off to that the next one up is our, that was not planned, was not deliberated, was not agreed upon before the meeting. Disclaimer out there, that our list of coffee talk invitees and points of discussion, Margaret and I went through this last week. We will try and keep to the allotted time. As I'm looking at the agenda, and for those that are in the audience and can't see it, what we'll do is we'll open it up with some of the updates from Senator Cronin and Representative Kilcoyne, and then swing it over to Chief Clark in Victoria and Paul McKelk to talk about the COVID testing kits and other related items. Hopefully they'll have their plan in place or close to being in place and can share with the town. And as you heard, we're going to bring in Susan and maybe Adam Wilbur or Mike Totman to talk about the election coming up November of 22 for the Regional School Committee. And then we'll swing down to the Traffic Advisory Committee where Fred can come in and talk about highway infrastructure, and our new Chief of Police, Eric Shartner, can come on in and talk about what they see going on. We know that traffic is probably the number one concern of folks in town from any previous coffee talks. And then we will swing it back to Margaret and June and Dennis and Molly to talk a little bit more about ARPA funds, the plan, the policies that we'll need to put in place. And then finally, we will, as always, open it up to the folks who are attending and get their comments, questions, concerns, things that keep them up at night. I did get the letter out to Jan at the item, so thank you, Clinton Item, for your continued support of the town. That will go out. Margaret, I don't know if maybe you can talk to Fred to change the blinky sign, to see if we can get some more on that. And then I'll definitely cross-post the WebEx meeting or Zoom meeting on our other two unofficial town sites to try and get more folks out there. Maybe we can come up with a flyer, tack it up at the general store, door of the library, maybe throw it down at 19 Carter, just so, on the door of the town offices, just so that more folks know about it.
Post office.
And post office. Okay. All right.
Nice job. I think that agenda looks very, very
Yeah.
nice. Very good.
Yes.
Yeah.
How soon before we have a Zoom link we can start sharing with people?
Mary, is that going to be the same Zoom link as the
It's
board's?
the same one. It's the
same one we use
555
for-
one. Same one that we always use, ending in 555.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Mary, as soon as you throw it out to Town of Berlin, I'll toss it around and we'll definitely get it out there. More people that we can have, the better. So that leads us down to new business. Margaret, you're always first up for FY23 budget process updates and budget requests, recommended line item approvals, if any.
Okay,
Yanni?
tonight we have
Awesome.
28, and I'm not going to spend a minute on each of the 28 lines. So I'm going to kind of wrap this up. So there are 28 budget lines that I'm asking the board for approval on. There are 13 wage lines, and of those wage lines, they are either level funded or reflect a 2% COLA. And there is also the sick pay line, that's line 118 if you're looking at your budget sheet. The sick pay line also reflects a 2% increase to reflect COLA for employee wages. And there are 15 expense lines that I'm asking the board to approve tonight. 9 of those expense lines are level funded. 4 of the expense lines combined total a $115 increase. And 2 of the expense lines total a $10,856 increase. One of those, heating oil, is by far the largest increase because of the price of heating oil. The other, the $1,800 plus, is in the data systems expense line to reflect a slight increase in our IT vendors contract costs. It's very minor, and I know Scott has info on our data systems budget and the contracts. But as far as I could tell, and this is the first year that I've picked up the data systems account and I'm having to track it, it looks as though everything else is fine to be level funded. We have the PC lease agreements, we have the copier lease agreement, so those fees will remain fairly stable.
So is it Peg and Scott? I had absolutely no problem with approving these 28 line items. I don't know about you, but if you're ready for a motion, I would make one.
I
have no
didn't. I mean,
questions, Scott.
these early line items are the least controversial, things that don't change, mostly contract stuff and relatively small. So I agree. It is fine. I'm totally fine with both voting and we'll second the motion.
All right, back to you. So is that a motion, Chris?
Yeah, that was a motion and I think Scott seconded it.
All right. So Margaret, again, we thank you for all your diligence on that and getting the easy peasy ones through. We know that the hard ones are, coming down the road
Next
hard and
2
fast.
weeks.
Oh,
January 24th and 31st will be the remainder.
ugh.
Wow.
All right. Motion and a second. Giddy up. Stone eye.
Hawkins, aye.
Keith, aye.
There you go, Margaret. Well
Thank
done.
you. Thank you.
All right. So the next line item, of course, took me a minute. I'm like, review the 2021 Select Board Annual Report. I'm like, what's that? And then my brain kicked in and went, well, that's the one that I wrote.
That was good.
Look, you know what? And even like my sippy cup is all empty, so I'm all good. All right. So Scott, I did see your comments and yeah, I agree. You know what? I can take some of the things out that we really didn't have control over, like the library, but I just wanted to make sure that Evan got,
Oh, yeah.
something out there. He did. The man came out of nowhere and he was an absolute godsend to this. So I don't know what, if anything, library will put in for him. So I'm happy to take it out if library shows up and there's a paragraph on Evan.
Yep.
The select board did
Mine was
approve
mostly
it.
for length. I think if I
Yeah.
didn't think length was a problem, I would have no problem with anything that's in it because even the things that we didn't have direct control over, it is great to tote some of the really fun,
Yes.
positive things that are happening
Yep.
in this town. For some reason, I keep thinking, okay, if the select board does 5 pages and every town department does 5 pages and every town committee does 5 pages, we have a book that makes War and Peace look short.
Well,
And-
that's where we rely on Laurie Fairbank to do it like an 8-point font. So, everyone's taking out their magnifying glass.
Right, I was gonna say, which then
Read
makes
it.
90% of town can't read it, but yes.
Right.
I also believe that since I also didn't do the writing, my opinion, I think should count less than you who spent the time and energy writing it too, so.
Well,
You know
what?
I would definitely feel as though Evan should be included only because we had a committee together that met with Evan. I was on that committee. So I'm one of the board members.
Yep.
However, there were some areas that I agree with Scott that if it doesn't have a direct connection to us,
Yeah.
maybe it could be shortened or
Mhm.
deleted.
Yeah, I'll go back and I'll take a look.
I'll
and
leave
like,
it up to you.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to whittle down, again, I want to thank Evan, and I think it's important to thank the younger residents of our town. I'm hoping that will kind of like shine a light for others, maybe to, I have no doubt that there are many unspoken things that are done by folks in this town that we have no idea about, and they do
Right.
it quietly because they don't want this recognition. They don't want, Peg and Tears blubbering over what they did. So, but to send that out, but what I'll do is I'll take it, I'll accept my changes, get it in better standing, and then I'll whiz it back around like one more time. Oh, we don't meet next week. All right, I'll whiz it back around one more time the week after. And we'll get it done. All right. And let's see, what's up? Oh, the Agriculture Commission revised Berlin Community Garden fees, increasing the fees for the non-residents. I can tell you, I got my little letter today in the
Yeah, me
census from
too.
Eloise. So I am happy to be a returning member, 3rd year to the community garden for that. So Margaret, I don't know if there's anything else that, we need to talk about that.
I thought they wanted us to vote on the
Changes.
change.
To accept, yeah, so the board is just asked to ratify the fee changes that are proposed that have been recommended by Ag Commission.
I thought the fees were still very reasonable, and I'm
Yes.
totally fine charging non-residents more than residents. The town is putting tax dollars into subsidizing it to keep it going, which I'm fine to do, but I'd rather support it for Berlin residents more than I do for people who don't live in town.
Is that a motion? I'll second it.
Oh, motion, okay, yep.
All right, and of course, being selfish, I'm going to say Stone Eye.
Hawkins, aye.
Keep eye.
Yeah, there was well over 30 plots or something last year. I mean, the first year that I was there,
Yeah.
honestly, the community garden was like this big. And then
Right.
last year it went this way and it went back farther. And it was just so nice to be able to get down there and talk to people and watch the stuff grow throughout the year. It saddens me every time I drive by now and it's just flat dirt. But it'll only be a
But-
matter of months. Spring is here. Spring is coming.
I was
So
gonna say,
do
I don't think things are gonna grow very well right now, though.
No.
No, probably not. Probably
maybe they
not.
need a bench down there so it can be like a social hangout.
It's a social hangout anyways. You come in, you kidding me? We talk about, country folk, you get out there, you're leaning on your rake, you're leaning on your hoe, you're yelling at somebody 3 plots down, over comes Deb Rolfe, talking to you. So it
Do you
really
have
is
to
a
have,
little.
do you have to have a garden plot in order to socialize down there? Can I
No,
come?
because you know what? I could say Chris Keefe has volunteered to do the weeding for every plot that is down there. So-
I would help.
So
Then they
no,
can
it's-
Because there's not 2 of us there at once. That's the thing. As long as there's not
Just-
2 of us there at once.
Right.
That is true, but Scott, it's big enough where you can be down near the shed and
know,
Chris can be
right.
down the other end and you'll never meet in the middle. So it'll be
Well,
good.
and we can meet as long as there's someone there to just share that we're talking about gardening stuff and not plotting
That
the,
is correct.
takeover of the world of some sort. But whatever people think that happens when 2 of us get together.
Oh, yeah, no. All right, so we are getting down to the end of our agenda. We are up to boards, questions, comments, liaison updates, go.
I gave my liaison update as an agenda item, so.
I think,
Chris?
I think Margaret sent out an email to update you all on the meeting that we had with Riverbridge.
Oh, go ahead. Yes.
No, I mean, I think you covered most everything, and I
Oh.
don't know whether the rest of it needs to be covered in
Okay.
open session or not, because it was sort of negotiations.
Yeah. Well, the amounts that are due for the public safety transitional mitigation payments are expected by the end of this month. So
Nice.
we're
Yeah.
expecting them. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and then, so we did the COA update on the pen pal, and I got nothing besides the conservation stuff that we went through, so I'm good. So given that, I will take there's no need for executive session. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So
So
moved.
moved. Or second.
All right. So keep an eye on your neighbors. It's supposed to be awfully cold, horrendous. Drip your faucets. I'm looking at mine now. It's drippy, drippy. Open up your cabinets like my father always did. Could never understand why, but now I do as the owner of a very old house. So yeah, check on your neighbors. Stay safe out there for the next couple days. Stone Eye. Oh,
Hawkins,
Okay.
aye.
yep.
Keep eye.
And Mrs. Narwitz?
Well, the town offices are a warm place to go if you have any issues with your heat. So during the day, you're welcome to come to the town offices. You can sit in the lobby or downstairs. And if anybody has any serious concerns, please contact the emergency management director, our own Chief Clark.
Awesome.
But you have to wear a mask.
Wear a mask.
Yes, and wear a
Must
mask.
wear a mask. Must
Yeah.
wear a mask if you come visit us.
I
Yeah.
now wear
So we have-
KN95 masks everywhere.
So we
Yeah.
have no meeting on Monday, so we will see everybody on Thursday, 6:30. I put the reminder on my calendar, not 7 o'clock, but 6:30
Mhm.
for next week. So we will see you at Coffee Talk.
And
All
I will
right.
be on vacation the 31st of January. I was going to be gone 3 weeks. My vacation is, I'll tell that story some other day, but I think that's the only meeting I'm going to miss right now is the 31st.
Really? Oh,
Okay.
well, I mean, no, it's,
Yeah.
but, all
All
right.
right,
Good night,
everyone. Dress
everyone.
warm.
Bye.
See you.
Night.
Bye.